Rain hammered the city like a cruel reminder that no one cared. Beneath a broken streetlight, a barefoot girl dug through a metal bin, her thin hands shaking. Lina's stomach growled louder than the thunder rolling above her. Her soaked dress clung to her skin, and her breath came out in small, trembling clouds of cold. A few feet away, hidden under an old bridge, her little brother Amir coughed weakly. His face burned with fever, his lips dry and pale. "Hold on, Amir," Lina whispered, pressing a wet hand to his forehead. "I'll find something. Anything." But there was nothing left to find. The garbage was only bones, wrappers, and the smell of spoiled meat. Her eyes stung with tears as she turned toward the glow of a restaurant across the street. Through the glass, she saw laughter, children smiling, plates full of roasted chicken, golden bread, steaming soup. The scent drifted out when a waiter opened the door, and Lina's knees nearly buckled. She pressed her hand against her hollow belly. 2 days without food. 2 nights hearing Amir cry for something she couldn't give. Her fingers closed around the coins in her pocket. 3 dull pieces of metal, sticky with rain. She stared at them, then at the restaurant again. The smallest meal in there cost 10 times more. A wave of shame washed over her. She wasn't a thief. Her mother had always said, "Even when you're hungry, stay honest." But her mother was gone now. So was her father. All that remained was Amir, and the promise Lina had made never to let him starve. She wiped her face, trying to look brave. "It's just 1 night," she whispered. "Just enough to help him." Lightning flashed, lighting up her reflection in the restaurant's window, thin, dirty, and wild-eyed. Inside, a waiter carried a tray of bread past the kitchen door, the soft light glowing behind him. The smell was unbearable now, sweet and warm like safety. Lina's heartbeat quickened. She looked once more toward the bridge, where Amir lay shivering under his torn blanket. "I'll bring you food tonight, Amir," she whispered again, her voice breaking. "I promise." She tucked her coins away, pulled her torn shawl tighter around her shoulders, and stepped off the curb. Rain pooled around her feet as she moved toward the narrow alley behind the restaurant, a dark mouth waiting to swallow her whole. The kitchen was silent, except for the faint hiss of oil on the stove and the ticking of the wall clock. Steam fogged the windows, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. The back door creaked open just enough for a thin, trembling figure to slip inside. Lina's heart pounded so loudly she was sure someone could hear it. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold tiles as she crept between the shelves. Every shadow felt alive, every flicker of light a warning. There, on the counter, a small plate of leftovers, a sandwich, a few pastries, and half a roll. Her hands shook as she reached out. The moment she touched the bread, warmth spread through her fingers like hope. She stuffed the food into her worn cloth bag, whispering under her breath, "For Amir." "This is for Amir." Behind her, oil crackled. A knife clinked against a pan. She froze. Someone was still here. A tall chef hummed softly as he cleaned his station. Lina crouched behind a shelf, pressing her hand over her mouth. The smell of butter and garlic made her dizzy. She waited for him to turn away, then took one careful step backward, then another. Her foot hit a metal tray. It clattered to the floor. The sound shattered the silence like glass. "Who's there?" the chef barked, spinning around. Lina darted for the door, clutching the bag against her chest. "Stop! Thief!" Another voice shouted as the kitchen lights flared on. She ran faster, her legs slipping on the wet tiles. A man lunged toward her, grabbing her arm, but she twisted free. A plate crashed to the ground, splintering into pieces. Out the door, into the cold night. Rain slapped her face as she sprinted through the alley, clutching the food as if her life depended on it. Her breath came in sharp, ragged bursts. Behind her, footsteps thundered and angry voices echoed, "Catch her! Don't let her get away!" Her lungs burned. Her feet tore against the rough ground, but all she could think of was Amir's face, pale, hungry, waiting. Almost there, she told herself. Just a little farther. The street opened ahead, the alley fading into darkness. She dared to glance back. The staff were still chasing, but slowing down. Relief washed through her, weak but real, and then a blinding light hit her face. She stopped, squinting into the glare of a car's headlights. A dark silhouette stepped out from behind the door, tall, composed, and silent. Rain glistened off his coat as he spoke, his voice deep and steady. "Stop right there, little girl." Lina froze, clutching the bag of stolen food, her heart thundering louder than the storm. Lina froze, her body rigid in the glare of the headlights. The rain fell harder now, pelting her face as the restaurant owner's furious voice echoed through the night. "Thief! Stop her! Don't let her run!" Two men from the kitchen caught up, grabbing her arms roughly. The bag of food slipped from her grasp, pastries scattering into the puddles. Lina struggled weakly, her voice cracking. "Please, I didn't mean to. I swear!" Her thin wrists trembled in their grip. She looked no older than 14, soaked, barefoot, and shaking. The restaurant owner, a heavy man with a red face, marched up, his anger sharp enough to cut through the rain. "You think you can steal from my place?" he shouted. "You'll spend the night in a cell, girl." "I'm calling the police." Lina's breath hitched. The word police made her knees go weak. She fell to her knees, tears mixing with rain. "I just wanted to feed my brother," she whispered. "He's sick." "I'm sorry." The man didn't care. He waved his phone angrily. But before he could dial, another voice cut through the storm. Deep, calm, and commanding. "Wait!" The crowd turned. The tall man from the car stepped forward, his umbrella shielding him from the rain. His suit was dark, his shoes polished even in the mud. His eyes, though, were softer than anyone expected. It was Mr. Kareem, a name everyone in the city knew. The billionaire philanthropist, the man who built shelters, donated hospitals, and rarely appeared in public without purpose. The restaurant owner stammered, Sir, I didn't know you were here." Mr. Kareem ignored him. He looked down at the trembling girl, her hair plastered to her cheeks, her small hands still clutching at the fallen food. "What's your name?" he asked gently. Lina said nothing. Her lips quivered, but no sound came. The shame was too heavy to speak through. "Why did you steal?" Still, she stayed silent. She stared at the ground, afraid that meeting his eyes would break her completely. The restaurant owner huffed. "Because she's a thief, that's why. These street kids—" "Enough," Mr. Kareem said sharply. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried authority that silenced everyone. He crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to Lina's level. For a moment, he studied her. The thin arms, the bruised knees, the hollow cheeks. Then he noticed the single sandwich still in her bag, half soaked, but untouched. She hadn't eaten. Not even a bite. Mr. Kareem straightened, his expression unreadable. The restaurant owner hesitated, still clutching his phone. "Should I call the police, sir?" one of the workers asked. Mr. Kareem looked around at the angry faces, at the trembling child, at the food lying ruined in the mud. And then he raised his hand. "No," he said firmly. "I will pay for her meal. Let her go." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Even the rain seemed to quiet. All eyes turned to him, stunned into silence. The street had fallen into stunned silence. Rain dripped from the awning as everyone stared. A billionaire defending a thief. Mr. Kareem handed his black card to the trembling restaurant owner. "Charge everything she took," he said calmly, "and prepare a fresh meal for her. Not scraps, something warm." The owner blinked, speechless. But sir, she—" "Do it," Mr. Kareem interrupted, his tone quiet but final. He turned back to Lina. She stood motionless, her thin arms wrapped around herself as if trying to disappear. The staff hesitated, then hurried inside to follow orders. Minutes later, A waiter emerged, holding a tray with steaming soup, bread, and tea. The aroma filled the air. Lina's stomach twisted painfully at the smell. "Sit," Mr. Kareem said softly, pulling out a chair near the entrance. She hesitated. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not kindly. Slowly, she obeyed, still clutching the wet bag against her chest. "Eat," he urged. Lina looked up at him, uncertain. "Why are you being nice to me?" "I stole." Mr. Kareem's eyes softened. "Because hunger isn't a crime," he said. Tears welled in her eyes. She took a small sip of the soup. It burned her tongue, but warmth spread through her like she hadn't felt in years. Between hesitant bites, she whispered, "My brother's sick. He hasn't eaten in days. What's his name?" "Amir." Mr. Kareem leaned back, thinking. "Where is he now?" Lina's voice trembled. "Under the bridge by Market Street. I couldn't leave him alone for long." The billionaire nodded slowly, glancing toward his car parked by the curb. "Finish your food," he said. "Then take me to him." Lina froze. You want to see him?" "I insist." She stared at him for a long moment. People didn't ask to see her world. They looked away from it. But his tone carried no pity, only quiet resolve. When she finished, Mr. Kareem opened the car door himself. Lina climbed in cautiously, her wet feet leaving marks on the floor mat. She'd never sat in a car so clean, so silent. The city lights passed by in streaks as the car glided through the rain. She pressed her face to the window, heart pounding, afraid it might all vanish like a dream. Finally, they reached the bridge, a dark, forgotten place, littered with boxes and old blankets. Amir lay curled under one, shivering. Lina rushed to him. "Amir!" "I'm here." Mr. Kareem stepped closer, lowering his umbrella. He saw the boy's thin frame, the fever in his eyes, and the way Lina covered him protectively with her own shawl. Something shifted in his expression, compassion mixed with anger at a world so cold. He knelt beside them, voice low and firm. "Come with me," he said. "From tonight, you both will have a roof." Lina froze, staring up at him through the rain. For the first time in months, hope flickered inside her, fragile, trembling, and terrifying. Lina woke with a start, her breath catching in her throat. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The blanket was soft. The pillow smelled of lavender. Sunlight spilled through the curtains like a dream she didn't dare believe. Then she remembered. The bridge, the rain, Mr. Kareem. She sat up slowly, touching the clean sheets with trembling hands. Amir slept beside her, his face calm, color returning to his cheeks. For the first time in months, he wasn't shivering. The door opened quietly. A maid entered, carrying a tray of breakfast, milk, bread, and fruit. Lina stared, unsure what to do. The woman smiled faintly, but avoided eye contact as she placed the tray on the table. "This is for you," she murmured, and left. Lina looked around the room, the shining floor, the tall mirror, and the gold-lined curtains. Everything was too perfect, too far from the cold she knew. Her heart ached with confusion. Why would a man like him help someone like me? But as she closed her eyes, the warmth faded, replaced by the memories she could never escape. Flames, screams, the smell of smoke, her mother's voice shouting her name. The fire had swallowed their small home in minutes, leaving only ashes and 2 frightened children. After that, their uncle took them in for a few weeks, then vanished with their savings, leaving them on the street. Lina pressed her fists against her eyes. "No one saves you," she told herself. Not really. Downstairs, the mansion buzzed with quiet order. Footsteps, murmured instructions, and clinking dishes. Lina wandered to the staircase, watching from behind the railing as maids moved about. "Did you see her?" one of them whispered. "Sir brought her from the street." "A thief, they say," the other scoffed. "People like that don't change. She'll steal again." "Wait and see," Lina's stomach twisted. She turned to run back upstairs, but stopped when a firm voice echoed from the hall. "That's enough!" Mr. Kareem stood there, eyes sharp. The maids froze. "She is a child," he said quietly, "and she is my guest. If anyone in this house can't show kindness, they don't belong here." The maids lowered their heads, embarrassed. Lina stood frozen on the stairs, tears blurring her vision. Later that day, Mr. Kareem took them both to a hospital. Doctors examined Amir and smiled. "He's malnourished, but he'll recover with good food and rest." Lina exhaled a shaky breath of relief. Mr. Kareem placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did well, Lina. You saved your brother." That night, the mansion was quiet. Lina sat by the window, watching city lights flicker in the distance. For the first time, she felt almost safe, but not quite. Then she heard a muffled voice outside her door. "Yes, I have the footage. The camera caught her stealing. Once this goes online, people will know what she really is." Lina's heart stopped. Someone was going to destroy everything, and she would lose it all again. The next morning, chaos exploded outside the mansion gates. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Headlines flooded every screen. "Homeless girl caught stealing. Living in billionaire's mansion." Videos from the restaurant's security camera had gone viral overnight. Comment sections boiled with judgment and gossip. Lina hid behind the curtain, her hands shaking as she scrolled through hateful comments. "She fooled him. Street kids will always steal." "Poor billionaire. Must have gone soft." Her throat tightened. She turned off the phone and buried her face in her arms. "I should never have come here," she whispered. "He'll regret helping me." Just then, Mr. Kareem entered the room. He didn't look angry, just calm, as always. "Lina," he said softly, "you've done nothing wrong." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "But everyone hates me. They think I'm still a thief." He pulled a chair beside her. "People love stories that make them feel superior. Let them talk. What matters is who you become next." She looked up, confused. He smiled faintly. "Don't run from your past. Show them who you are now." Those words lingered in her mind for days. Mr. Kareem helped her enroll in a nearby school, a place filled with children from wealthy families who stared when she walked in, whispering about the viral thief. The first weeks were hard. Books felt heavy. The lessons seemed impossible. But Lina refused to give up. She studied late into the night, determined to prove she was more than her mistake. Slowly, things changed. Her teachers noticed her dedication. One day, when she answered a difficult math problem perfectly, the class fell silent, then clapped. From that day on, respect replaced ridicule. Meanwhile, Amir recovered completely, running through the mansion gardens, laughing in the sunlight. The dark circles under his eyes had vanished. Every time Lina saw him smile, she remembered the night they slept under the bridge, and how far they had come. Months passed. News outlets moved on to other stories. The world forgot. But Lina hadn't. She kept studying, dreaming of becoming a doctor, so no child would suffer like Amir did. Then, one evening, Mr. Kareem invited her to a charity event. The same reporters who once mocked her were there. The lights were bright. The cameras are countless. A journalist stepped forward, microphone raised. "Lina," she asked gently, "do you regret stealing that night?" The hall went silent. Lina's chest tightened. The memories rushed back. The hunger, the fear, the cold. She looked toward Mr. Kareem, who nodded silently. Lina turned back to the reporter, eyes glistening. "I regret being hungry," she said softly, "but I don't regret what that night taught me. That kindness can turn even a thief into someone worth believing in." The crowd erupted in applause, and for the first time, Lina smiled without fear. Lina stood before the blinding lights of the cameras, her heart racing as a sea of faces and microphones closed in. She could feel her palms trembling, her voice nearly caught in her throat. But she knew this was her moment to tell the truth. "Yes," she began softly, her voice breaking through the murmurs. "I stole that night." She paused, breathing through the fear. "But not for myself, for my dying brother." A hush fell over the hall. Even the reporters lowered their microphones slightly. I was hungry. He was sick. I didn't think about rules or laws. I only thought, if I could get him food, maybe he'd survive one more night. The silence deepened, but this time it was different. Heavy with emotion, not judgment. Cameras zoomed closer as tears welled in her eyes. "I know stealing is wrong," she continued, voice steady now. "But hunger makes you do things you never imagined. That night didn't make me a criminal. It made me human." When the interview aired, the reaction was instant and overwhelming. Millions of people watched, commented, and shared her words. Hashtags like Lina Speaks Truth and Hope for the Homeless trended across platforms. Donations poured in to help street children and struggling families. The world that once mocked her now listened. The story of a girl once branded as a thief had become a symbol of courage. Later that evening, Mr. Kareem called her to his study. He looked thoughtful, almost nostalgic as he spoke. "You reminded the world what real strength looks like," he said. "I saw myself in your story, Lina." She frowned slightly. "You were like me?" He nodded. "Before all this, the companies, the fame, I was a boy selling newspapers on the street. Hunger was my teacher, too. That's why I knew what you needed wasn't punishment. It was a chance." Lina's throat tightened. "You gave me that chance," he smiled warmly. "Now I want you to give it to others. Join me. Help run the foundation. Together, we'll make sure no child goes hungry again." Tears shimmered in Lina's eyes as she nodded. "I'll do it, sir. For Amir. For all of them." Years passed, and Lina's transformation became the heart of the charity's story. From a frightened girl under a bridge to a confident young woman standing at a podium, she had found her purpose. The Grand Hall buzzed with excitement on the night of her first speech as the Foundation's new ambassador. She adjusted the microphone, smiled at the crowd, and began to speak, her voice calm, strong, and radiant. But as her gaze swept across the audience, her smile faltered. In the back row, half hidden in the shadows, stood a man she never expected to see again. The same uncle who had abandoned her after her parents' death. Her heartbeat quickened. The past, she thought. She'd buried him and had just stepped back into her life. Lina's gaze locked onto the man in the back of the hall, her estranged uncle. The man's shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and fear. Time had aged him, but the guilt he carried was heavier than any years could bear. "Lina," he began, voice trembling. I'm sorry. I was ashamed of what we lost, and I was broke. I left you. I shouldn't have." For a heartbeat, Lina said nothing. The crowd around her seemed to fade, leaving only the hollow ache of the past between them. She could feel the anger, the betrayal, and the hurt that had shadowed every lonely night under the bridge. Then she breathed deeply, letting the weight ease from her chest. Softly, with calm conviction, she said, "No child should suffer what we did. You made mistakes, but I am not that girl anymore. I will not let the past define me." Her uncle lowered his head, tears brimming in his eyes. He nodded slowly, silently grateful. The next day, Lina returned to the restaurant where her story had begun. The place where hunger had driven her tostil and where compassion had changed her life. She carried boxes of food, each carefully packed, and handed them to the staff with a gentle smile. "Please give this to those who need it," she said. The restaurant manager paused, awe shining in his eyes. Mr. Kareem stood beside her, observing quietly. His eyes gleamed with pride. The girl who had once run through the rain, trembling and barefoot, now stood tall and strong, transforming her pain into hope for others. Over the following weeks, Lina's charity work grew. Every meal delivered and every child helped felt like a victory over the years of fear, hunger, and despair. Her speeches inspired many. Her story became a testament to the power of kindness. Finally, the day came when she stood once more before a crowd, not as a scared girl, but as a beacon of hope. She adjusted the microphone and looked out over the faces eager to listen. "Kindness can save a life," she said, her voice clear and strong. It saved mine. The applause was deafening. Tears shone in eyes across the hall. Lina smiled, a lightness she had never known filling her chest. Despair had been replaced by gratitude, shame by purpose, and hunger by abundance, not only for her and Amir, but for every child her work touched. Her uncle, now quietly at her side, nodded with respect. Mr. Kareem gave a small, approving smile. The lesson was clear. A single act of compassion, even something as simple as paying for a meal, could rewrite a life. And as Lina looked out into the audience, she spoke one final thought, not just for them, but for the world. If this story touched your heart, share it to remind others, kindness is never wasted. Rain or shine, wealth or poverty, despair or hope, one small act could change everything. Lina had lived it, and now she helped others live it too.